My name is Steve Madel, and I've known Richard ever since he came to the station. I remember when he first came, he was working I think he was in accounting, he wasn't in production. He then was also assisting when we did the live auctions, helping Zan Grant categorize all the artwork and the big pieces and things that came in. I knew, and we had talked, and he always wanted to work in production, and he finally got up there. It was really cool. We did tons of different things together, and I always remembered he'd come in all the time and he'd have this really loud, hearty laugh. He'd go, ah, ah, ah. You'd hear him, and oh, Richard's here. We know Richard's here. It was kind of neat. I really enjoyed working with him, and I missed him a lot. One of the things that I always remembered, everywhere Richard went, we'd go on a break, we'd go out to eat, he would have this with him. And he would always put it on everything. He'd bring his own. Even when we'd go to restaurants, he'd go, nope, gotta have my hot sauce, gotta have my hot sauce. And it's like, it just became a tradition. And every time I'm gonna walk through a restaurant, or I'm gonna go to the store, or I'm gonna go by a refrigerator and see this, I'm gonna remember Richard.
My name's Billy Driver, and I've had the honor and privilege to work for Richard for about 6 years now. One of my biggest memories of Richard was merely just speaking with him. He always had a great story to tell, and he always would open up his phone and he would show me pictures and tell me stories about when he was at the Austin Pizza Garden, and then then we'll talk about other things like ghosts, since he was a big fan of that genre, and so we'd always share stories. And I remember he would always come to lunch here at the tapings, and he would always bring his own lunch. And I remember his lunch always looked way better than my Richard sandwich. And I would always ask him what he's cooking or what he's eating, and he would always tell me all these cool recipes that he's doing, that he's making. So I always thought he was always a great person to talk to. And he always made me feel welcomed. And he was one of the first people, earlier on when I first started coming here, he would take time and show me how things are done and how to properly do stuff. And I remember I would always ask him about his online business. And one day I had an allergy issue, and he actually took time off, went to his bag, took out his I have no idea what it is, took a couple drops, and I didn't have a problem for that day. So with all that said, he'll be greatly missed here, and I just feel really honored to have known him.
Hi, my name is Jeff Bird, and I work for KLRU, and specifically Austin City Limits doing audio. I think I got to know Richard about 5 years ago during my first season working for Austin City Limits, and always will remember him as being a warm person and very friendly, and always a pleasure to be with, working long days here and always having a smile. I had a funny incident with Richard a couple years ago. It was the first time I was at a meeting after for the union, and after a taping, and we met across the street at the Ginger Man and having a beer with everybody, and they were going down a list of names of people that have worked and potential union candidates. And as they were going down the list of names, the name Jeff Bird was announced, and Richard out loud said, "Who the hell is Jeff Bird?" And I was sitting right there next to him, and I said, "That's me." And he just didn't know my last name, and so that was kind of our running joke all the time, was I'd go by, and he's like, "Who the hell's Jeff Bird?" And I always remember that. And I think I have very good feelings about him, and I hope everything, that this brings some comfort to you, knowing he was a good person, and always a pleasure to be around.
Well, my name is Beverly Barrett, and I worked with Richard Welch for probably on and off for 20 years, maybe 17 years. He was there when when I first started. I remember him playing piano. I worked with Richard a lot recently at Austin City Limits, and we were on the same rotation a lot, both working on lighting or loading recently, and so I've been missing him a lot today, and he always got my jokes, even if they were super weird, and he didn't look at me like I was crazy for saying them. And today I thought of him because there was a blue loom, and people kept saying, "Blue loom, get the blue loom," and the red loom, and I thought of, I had that song, "Blue Loom," in my head, and I thought that Richard would have gotten that and thought it was, and sang a song. This made me realize that Richard was always very kind, and I appreciate that about him, and I think that he made the world a better place, so I will miss working with him.
My name is Colleen Nelson, and I've known Richard for about 5 years now. When I first started working at KLRU, I was an intern doing studio productions, and Richard was there for virtually every single one. I specifically remember really enjoying hanging out with him during client events, because we would have so much time just to hang out and sit and talk, and he would tell me stories, and he would teach me all the things that he has learned over his years working at KLRU. And then when I became a full-time member of the team, he was just so sweet and so helpful, and he was always a smiling face, and he had this great laugh that I'll never forget, and he really became a part of the family, and we will miss him dearly.
My name is Ed Carter, or Ed Carter, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I first met Richard back in 2001. We both worked at KLRU together on ACL Productions, overheard an assortment of different TV shows, and Richard's somebody I will remember fondly because he was just an affable, nice dude, and we'd share lunch, and after shows go with the Ginger Man, crack jokes, all that good stuff. He was a very easy man to get along with, I shall certainly miss him because he was one of the good ones.
Hi, my name is Walter Olden. I'm the lighting director here at Austin City Limits, and I've been working here a long time, and I'm not sure how long, but I've known Richard for. Ever since he's been working here, I've seen him and met him, and he's worked on my crews a number of times. He was always a pleasure to work with. He always had a friendly face. He was also one of those guys that you could joke with, kid around, and if things are going bad or whatever, you can make a joke or whatever, and always made things go a little easier that way. He always had a friendly face, kind smile. Even when he was grumpy, you could go and you could rim him a little bit, and it would make him feel better. And he would do the same thing, so he meant a lot to everybody here. It's always nice to be able to have someone that you don't see very often or whatever, but you have the camaraderie and the kind of friendship that it doesn't matter how long it's been. You come back to work each other, it's like you haven't missed a day. And it's going to be a big hole left in that section. So it was a shock to hear him go so fast. He left way too early, and I'm just so sorry that he's gone. I'm going to miss him.
My name is Jay Malecki. I'm one of the camera operators for ACL and KLRU. I moved to Austin from Pennsylvania in 2010 and met Richard Welch as one of my first coworkers, and Richard became my first friend in this town. So much so that he connected me to the whole crew here. And being a newbie and being around people that have been at KLRU for so long, I was feeling like I wanted more community and I didn't know if I was accepted. But Richard always took me under his arm and introduced me to people, and I feel like he became an adopted uncle to me. We would often have dinner together at his house, or take a road trip to Lukenbach on the weekend with his wife and his grandson, and I would help him prepare dinner, and we would have wonderful discussions everything from the Grateful Dead to the Bible to reminiscing about old ACL tapings. He was also a remarkable musician, and many people might not know he played everything from piano to guitar to harmonica, and he was a very special friend that made me feel welcome and helped me to establish great relationships with all of the wonderful people here at the station. So he will be missed, and I hear his laugh still. His laugh is very special to me, so I'm going to miss Richard, and we'll have to keep him in our hearts forever.
My name is Daniel Velis, and I've been, I guess, with KLRU. I think I started in season 34, and I've known Richard for a good amount of time, almost 10 years that I've known Richard. So 2 things I know about Richard is that his sense of humor and his love for his grandson Malachi. So I'll start with his sense of humor. One time we went to have lunch together, and he forgot his wallet. And so I was like, let's go somewhere cheap. And we went to Taco Bell, and Richard thanked me, and I was like, okay, but get my lunch next time. And he was like, yeah, no problem. I was like, I know you live by J Black's, so why don't we go there? And J Black's, if you know the area, is similar to Eddie V's, kind of like a 5-star cuisine kind of place, so it doesn't quite match Taco Bell. He thought that was pretty funny. And also he talks about Malachi a lot. It's his favorite person in the whole wide world. One of the last things he showed me before the last taping was he had a picture of Malachi when he was 2 years old in a field of bluebonnets. And he said, the bluebonnets are coming back, and it reminds me when I took a picture of Malachi. And he showed me this beautiful picture of him wearing these overalls in a sea of bluebonnets. And he says, I have it online. And I don't know, we just talked about how special that was. And I guess it was great that Malachi had somebody like Richard, a good puppy.
My name is Mark Morrow, and I first had the privilege of meeting Richard back in 2007 when I began interning at KLRU. And it can be rough being an intern. You don't always feel welcomed and accepted. But the first day that I worked with Richard, he greeted me with a handshake and a smile, and he gave me a pat on the back. And he immediately just kind of took me under his wing, and he was just so kind and friendly and willing to teach me everything. And I learned so much from him in my early days of working in television. And that mentality of his, it never changed. He always was happy and willing to help out and greet people and see how you were doing and willing to talk. So that always really stuck with me, just how kind of a person he was and willing to check in on you and see how you were doing. And most people probably remember him for his hot sauce or his laughter, and those things I will always also remember about him. And I always found it very touching that he was so excited to share his stories about setting up a fake Alamo set of little toys and launching fireworks at them to recreate the Alamo. I always thought that was the coolest thing ever, and he's going to be very missed.